An Apache woman on sale faced the crowd. One cowboy changed her fate forever. Yet in the middle of all this life, a different scene was unfolding, one that drew every eye despite the bustle. A group of men had gathered around a raised platform in the center of the street, and on that platform stood a young Apache woman. She was tall for her age, with dark hair that fell over her shoulders in thick waves. Her eyes, strong and clear, swept over the crowd with calm defiance. Despite the fine dust settling on her skin and the rough rope that bound her hands, she held herself with a quiet dignity that made some onlookers uneasy. People whispered to each other, unsure whether to cheer or sneer, as the auctioneer cleared his throat and began his calls. "Ladies and gentlemen, gather close. Today we have a rare opportunity. A fine young Apache woman, strong and capable. Who will bid first?" She focused on her breathing and straightened her shoulders, making it clear that she would not crumble under their gaze. The auctioneer's voice rose again and the bids began. One man offered a small amount, mostly to laugh at the situation, and the crowd erupted in jeers. Another bid slightly higher, and a few others followed, treating her as if she were an object rather than a person. She looked out at the faces surrounding her, some grinning, some grimacing, and felt a surge of frustration and helplessness. Yet, even in the middle of despair, she refused to bow her head. As the bidding continued, tension thickened. Each offer seemed to push her future further out of her hands, and the weight of the ropes around her wrists reminded her of how little control she had. She wondered what life would be like if this ended tonight. Would she be forced to live in a place she did not know? Would her spirit, her freedom, be lost forever? Her mind raced, but she held her gaze steady on the horizon, trying to imagine escape, however impossible it seemed. From the edge of the crowd, a figure appeared. He was a cowboy, dressed in worn but neat clothing, with a wide-brimmed hat shading his face. Unlike the others, he did not jeer or whisper to friends. He simply watched, silent and calm. His eyes did not linger on her as a prize or a curiosity. Instead, there was a quiet strength in the way he observed the scene, a patience that made him seem taller than he really was. People noticed him, but few understood what he was thinking. Some muttered, "Who does he think he is?" Others shook their heads at his calm demeanor. He seemed uninterested in the spectacle, yet he held himself with a sense of authority that made the auctioneer pause. Then slowly he stepped forward and raised his hand. A hush fell over the crowd. "I'll bid," he said, his voice clear and steady. "Enough to take her away from this." The woman on the platform felt her heart skip a beat. She had not expected this. She had not even dared to imagine a way out. And yet, here was a man who did not see her as property, who seemed to understand that she deserved choice, dignity, and respect. She looked at him cautiously, unsure if this was a trick or if he could really be trusted. But there was something in his eyes that told her he meant every word. The auctioneer, surprised by the turn of events, tried to continue the bidding, calling out numbers and asking if anyone would challenge the cowboy. A few men laughed nervously and shouted low offers, but none dared to oppose him. Slowly, the realization spread through the crowd. The cowboy would win. The jeers and whispers turned to quiet murmurs. Some looked disappointed, others irritated, but no one stepped forward to contest. The cowboy handed over the coins, counting them carefully but without hesitation. The ropes were cut, and the woman felt the sudden lightness in her wrists as freedom returned to her hands. She could barely believe it. After what felt like hours of fear and uncertainty, she could move without being controlled. For the first time in a long while, she could breathe without constraint. As they prepared to leave, he turned to her and nodded. There were no grand speeches, no promises he could not keep, just a simple gesture that said, "You are free. Come with me if you wish." She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and cautious hope. Slowly, she stepped down from the platform, her movements deliberate and careful, not wanting to show too much eagerness, but feeling the weight of possibility settle on her shoulders. The cowboy guided her gently, keeping a respectful distance but ensuring she was safe. Some in the crowd shouted insults, others glared, but he paid them no mind. The woman walked beside him, unsure of where this path would lead but relieved that, for the first time, she had a choice. The town faded behind them, its dust and noise replaced by the vast openness of the frontier, where danger still lurked but freedom could exist. As they rode toward the horizon, the woman's mind wandered. She thought of the life she had known, the hardships she had endured, and the courage it had taken to survive each day. She realized that courage would be needed still, but now it would be her own choice, not imposed by fear or cruelty. And for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. The cowboy glanced at her briefly, sensing her thoughts. He did not speak, understanding that words were not needed. Trust was fragile, but it could grow in time. The open land stretched ahead, a promise of change and possibility. And though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. This act had shifted her life, turning a moment of despair into the first step of a new beginning. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, the two continued their journey. The woman walked beside him, feeling the warmth of hope rise inside her. She knew there would be challenges, that the world could be harsh and unfair, but she also knew she was no longer alone. One person's courage, one act of compassion, had changed her fate forever. And for now, that was enough. The town disappeared behind them, replaced by wide fields and distant hills. Birds flew across the sky, and the wind carried a promise of freedom she had not known in years. With every step, she felt more herself, more human, more alive. She did not know what awaited her, but she was ready to face it. Because she had survived the worst and found an unexpected ally in the most unlikely place. And so, the journey began, not just a journey across land, but a journey of hope, trust, and rediscovering the strength within her. Each step forward was a step away from fear and toward a life that she could shape for herself. The cowboy rode quietly beside her, a steady presence, a guide and a protector. And though the road was long and uncertain, for the first time in a long time, the woman felt free. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting soft golden light across the fields. The Apache woman had slept lightly that night, the events of the auction still vivid in her mind. Her wrists no longer bore the harsh marks of ropes, and each movement felt freer than it had in years. Beside her, the cowboy rode silently, keeping a steady pace. Though he said little, she felt his presence as a quiet assurance, a promise that she was not alone. They traveled through open land, past rivers that sparkled in the morning light and forests that whispered with the wind. Each new scene was a reminder of how vast the world could be, how many possibilities existed beyond the town that had once trapped her. The woman felt a mixture of relief and cautious hope. Freedom was not just the absence of chains, it was the power to choose, and for the first time she had that power in her hands. The cowboy finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "You can decide what happens next. There is no one here to force you. This is your life." "That's enough for now." She realized that speaking aloud was freeing. Each word lifted a weight from her heart, and she felt a new kind of strength growing inside her. As the days passed, they encountered others along the way. Some were travelers, others settlers moving westward. Many looked at the woman with curiosity and some with suspicion. She noticed their glances, the cautious distance they kept, but she no longer felt powerless. The cowboy had taught her, without words, that respect could be demanded through courage and confidence. Slowly, she learned to hold her head high and respond to the world with dignity. Food and water were scarce at times, and the journey was not easy. The woman learned quickly to hunt, gather, and care for herself, guided gently by the cowboy. He never pushed her but offered lessons when she asked, and she absorbed every bit of knowledge with determination. Nights were spent by campfires, where they spoke of hopes and dreams, and she began to imagine a life that was truly her own. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, the cowboy stopped near a small stream. They dismounted, and the woman knelt by the water to wash her face. She looked at her reflection, noticing how much she had changed in a short time. Fear was still there, a shadow in the corners of her mind, but it was no longer controlling her. She felt a spark of hope she had not felt in years, a sense that she could rebuild, create, and live freely. The cowboy watched quietly, then spoke. "You've come far. You've survived what few could endure. But remember, this journey is just the beginning. The world is not always kind, but you are strong enough to face it. I want to live, truly live, not just survive." She was no longer defined by what others had tried to impose on her. She was not just a victim of circumstance. She was a survivor, a learner, a person with the power to choose her path. Every step forward reinforced this realization. Along the way, they faced challenges. Rivers swelled after rains, and wild animals lurked in the forests. At times, travelers tried to deceive or exploit them, but the cowboy's steady presence ensured they were safe. Through these trials, the woman learned not only survival skills but also the importance of courage, discernment, and trust. She began to feel capable, confident that she could face life's obstacles with resilience. As the weeks turned into months, she started to dream again. Small dreams at first, learning to cook over a fire, sewing her own clothes, walking into a nearby town without fear. Then larger dreams emerged, finding a place to call home, helping others who had suffered, living in a way that honored her culture and her spirit. Each dream strengthened her resolve, each accomplishment, no matter how small, reminded her of her worth. The cowboy never demanded gratitude or loyalty. He offered guidance and protection, and in return she gave trust and respect. They shared stories, sometimes of hardship, sometimes of laughter. Through this companionship, she learned that kindness and courage often came in unexpected forms, and that one person could indeed change the course of another's life. One morning, as the sun rose over a quiet valley, the woman stopped to watch the light spill across the hills. She felt a profound sense of peace she had never known. The journey had not erased her past, but it had given her a future, a chance to rebuild and reclaim her life. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew she had the strength to face them. The cowboy joined her silently, offering a simple nod. No words were needed. They both understood the significance of this moment. She was free, truly free, and she would carry that freedom in every choice, every action, every day. They continued onward, the road stretching into the distance. The world was vast and unknown, but it no longer frightened her. She had learned to trust herself, to trust others wisely, and to value the small acts of courage that could change lives. She understood now that freedom was not simply being unbound. It was living with dignity, hope, and the knowledge that she had control over her own destiny. Over time, they came to a small settlement where the woman could begin building a life of her own. She found work, slowly earning respect and independence. The cowboy stayed nearby for support, never intrusive, always ready to lend guidance if needed. She learned to interact with neighbors, some kind and some wary, and she discovered that the world was not entirely cruel. There were people willing to help, willing to see others as equals, and willing to act with compassion. As months turned into seasons, the woman grew stronger in every way. Her skills, her confidence, and her sense of self-worth all expanded. She became known for her courage, her kindness, and her resilience. And though she had endured tremendous hardship, she carried no bitterness, only gratitude for the chance to live fully and freely. The cowboy eventually prepared to move on, knowing his role in her life had shifted. Before leaving, he said, "Remember, the world may not always be fair, but you are strong. Live your life fully and never forget that courage can change the course of fate." "I promise." Her courage inspired those around her, and her resilience became a testament to the power of hope and human kindness. The memory of the auction lingered, but it no longer held power over her. What mattered now was the life she chose to lead and the freedom she had fought to reclaim. In the quiet moments, she often thought of the cowboy who had changed her fate forever. He had appeared at the right moment, offering not just safety, but dignity, respect, and a chance at life. Through his actions, she had learned that one act of courage, One choice to stand for what is right can ripple across lives and transform the impossible into reality. And so the woman's life moved forward, not defined by fear, but shaped by hope, courage, and the knowledge that she was free to be herself. Each day brought new challenges, new joys, and new lessons, and she faced them all with the strength she had found within herself and the wisdom she had gained along the way. The journey of survival had become a journey of life, and she embraced it fully, knowing that her fate had been changed forever.